What's up, heaters? This is your Ecobesties Palerskie.
And this is your Ecobestie Kat.
And for today's episode, for today's podcast, we will be showing you different videos with our interviewee. And these are personal stories, personal experience. And for today's video, we will gonna be humanizing their stories because climate change is real.
Indeed, Palerskie, it is real. So, okay. What is the prompt of this discussion, Monday?
Yes, what's a prompt, Kat? What's the question that we throw away from our interviewees?
So, basically, we interviewed 4 individuals with diverse backgrounds. And the question that we asked in each of them is,
I'd do anything to get you humans out of my forest.
We farmers, we sit here every year when it rains.
This year, and now the trees have gone.
in what ways does climate change affect you?
And for our first interviewee, let's gonna play it, Kat.
Let's go.
Climate change really also affect our source of income in our back to our provinces, because my father is also a fisherman, and the heat right now is really affect the working jobs under the sea sector and land sector.
For me personally, I've encountered this study wherein they talked about how fisher folks can transition from being a fisherman towards becoming tricycle driver or like food vendor because na of climate change. And dito natin makikita on how climate change affect them firsthand, especially this marginalized community, kasi it is not just on their health ang apekto ang effect of the climate change, but also on their livelihoods, which deteriorates their lives.
So parang siyang domino effect Kat, no, na from mental to income to psychological and everything in between. And speaking of marginalized, nabanggit mo yung word na marginalized, Kat, I will also like to highlight also yung word na vulnerability na I think it's very predominant sa mga climate change reporters or mga climate change discourses. Kasi if we look at it in a very general in the spectrum sense vulnerability, dito mapapakita talaga yung having this dominant knowledge system from the Western discourses. So if we try to apply it, especially in the Philippine context where these fishermen, some majority of them, alam mo yun, parang are not giving do not have that opportunity to learn these new concepts, scientific concepts. So it excludes them from these discourses. So sila yung naapektuhan. So alam mo yun, there's a lot of things that are arising right now, yung mga effect ng gases, the carbon emission towards the seas, and hindi nila alam yun. They have this own knowledge of system na sila lang nakakaintindi, and it divides them from the general fisher.
They are marginalized.
Yes. Kaya I think ang solution dito, Kat, is to really have a holistic approach in understanding these problems. So I think policymakers should have initiatives, no, to merge whatever their plans.
Before we delve into policy making, let's stop muna dito. And since it will be furtherly discussed on the special guest.
Oh, may special guest tayo for later. Sige, let's reserve that one.
Mamaya.
So, let's go to our second video, guys.
Let's go.
Alright.
Siguro I can suggest nga mas okay siguro ang mag-bus, mag-commute kaysa mapalit pa ta og another sakyanan. Gawas nga makasave ta kung mag-bus ta, maka-lessen sa traffic.
So that is our second interviewee, is herself, who owns a motorcycle. But also in the latter part of the interview, he suggested na sana yung mga people will also think na why not take a bus na lang or a public transportation rather than owning their own motorcycle, owning their cars. I do think yung perspective is dito. I think it's one of the major narratives of circular economy, which is from shifting from consumer to user. And basically the concept of that mga heater is that it promotes the very usage-based models such as leasing, sharing, or renting. And ako personally, Kat, I do also love the concept of that narrative because it highlights the collaborative consumption, di ba? And here in the Philippines, it's very evident. Meron tayong sa transportation, you have Grab, Angkas, Move It, Pero sa mga condo, we have the Airbnb thing. Sa mga damit, we have the carousel thing. So and it has really advantages kasi it lessen the consumption of energy and also the release of gases. And basically the energy itself na nilalabas natin from sa sarili natin, sa sasakyan, sa bahay. So, I do love this. But how about you?
In theory, Palerskie, I think it
Yes.
sounds good.
Alright.
Pero, okay, let's be real here.
Okay, what's the real? Because I'm delusional.
Yeah, climate change is real.
Okay.
Okay, so here in the Philippines, let's just observe, or like as you have guys observed, the mass transit is not good. Let's
Okay.
to be frank. Okay, so kana palang daan, we can say, or we can already say that how can we blame these people who drive cars, di ba? When in reality, in the first place, bati ang ato ang mass transit. We don't have the good like mass transit or like bus rapid transit
Yes.
system for these people, or for the Filipino people to commit instead of like driving their own cars. So I think it, for now, that theory cannot be implemented here in the Philippines, or it is not applicable in a way. For me personally, I was a commuter and I have experienced firsthand how
But you do have car.
yeah, we do have
Yes.
car, but wala kaming panggas. So yeah, that's that.
Yes, and aside from that, Kat, but there's a resistance also of systemic change. Parang, of course, you have the business-minded people, the profit about it, and we also have very cultural barrier. Kasi nga ba parang it's not recommended for them to really share what you own.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things also that conflict about these narrative. And speaking of narrative, di ba lumabas tayo, Kat? And we
Yes.
interviewed people somewhere out there, and we learned something from her as well.
Yes.
Kung ano yung take niya on this, and we try to assess also ano yung mga current understanding ng people outside with outside with our bubbles, because these are the people that we are not used to talk to. So knowing about their stories, it also humanizes na parang at least at their level they know that it is real.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
let's-
so let's stop yapping na. No?
Alright.
Let's go to the next video.
Na ba yung mga preparation na sila na
Naa kuan mga tanod, tanod ug ang mga kuan, ang mga kanang galing ko sa bibiro. Kana sila magkuan man na sila mag-feeding na sila dito nga katong dapit sa sapa, magbantay-bantay o kundi maginahinay at bakwit sa kusog na kay uwan. Rescue sad man sila kung naay sa kada sapa, kusog kay uwan, ilang rescue hold ang kuan taga barangay ug ang kuan kumbiruhan.
Pero naka-encounter na sad ka ng mga near sa sapa, di dyan mo hawa, like mo isog na. Di na okay lang ni diri.
Kay dili nga biya ng balay. Kay natas na yung mga kuan biya, na mga butang, nasa sila hayo. Mana di sila mulakaw. Ano, bisa ilang balay na.
Di sila mahawa. Story of Ate Crispina.
Crispina and the other people who are also living in hazardous places. No?
Yes.
Like what you have said earlier, ang kaning mga rescuers or ang tanod, they tried to evacuate these residents. We really don't know if is it before or during the calamity or the typhoon, but what we're sure is that it is already, or like this is the current situation of how the Philippines or our local government in general address typhoons or these natural disasters. I would like to touch on the social practice or how the scientific and humanistic approach is integrated, especially in addressing these natural disasters. No, kay it is really important to have a dialogue with the marginalized people, because of course they are the ones who are living in these hazardous places, and we, the privileged or the people who are not living in that particular areas, we do not really know what are their current situation or what are their reasons on why they still continue to stay in that particular places or in that hazardous places.
I agree with you, Ecobestie Kat, no, that these natural disasters or even man-made disasters, it is really something social and has a political context. And this is very parallel to this Marcos Senior administration, wherein in the readings of Bankoff, diba, he really mentioned the very hazardous or one of the most memorable floods and typhoons way back in 1970s,
Yes.
such as Bagyong Gloring, Bagyong Yoling, and all of these typhoons are having its immense impact talaga sa different parts of the Philippines. When we say social and political context, part talagang administration dito, part yung government, part everything that is under the administration. And we all know that them, if I could say so, they are the primary economic and political beneficiary. So there's a kind of manipulation. It's very evident during the pandemic, diba? Na parang yung government, oh, eto may libre kang ayuda. So people will grab it easily without having a critical or assessing, para saan nga ba to? What's this thing for? They will just, oh, at least may ginawa yung government. But if we try to assess all of those stuff, it's just a band-aid solution. Like here in the Philippines or in the global south, it's something na very band-aid. And we all know why such thing happened, di ba? Even we all know that during the 1970s, Marcos Senior's administration, meron na silang 10 centavos per person na pondo. So from there palang kita na natin yung corruption and the unsustainability solution made by the administration. Diba, Kat?
Yeah. I mean, are we going to mention the part where they try to like put their names on the ayuda?
Yes.
Diba?
Sa mga vaccine, and then yung printed pictures sa mga government officials. It's all very political. There's a kind of manipulation.
It's always political.
Yes, and everything is political. We have our climate reporter, our special guest, who will be as well introducing what's really the solution for these climate change, right, Kat? So without further ado, let's play the video.
The Philippines is a country that is very prone to natural disasters, and over the years we have noticed that these disasters continue to be unusual and erratic than it was before. That is why it is very important to tell stories and write stories that concern climate change to help the public understand that these effects are real. Ultimately, we would also want to influence policymakers and leaders on what they should do to mitigate the effects of climate change, and hopefully we can be able to adapt to the different effects that we are reeling in right now, not just in the Philippines, but hopefully in Southeast Asia.
Know her. She is a climate change
reporter, correspondent.
Yes. It is really important to stress on the systematic issues and the policy itself. As we all know, climate change is real, diba?
Yes.
So disaster management is really important, and it demands a complex transformation of societal systems, not just in policy making, but as well as in communicating with these marginalized sectors. So basically, it is a holistic approach.
Yes.
And in order for us to address climate change, we all have to work together. Dapat walang freeloader.
May unity.
Dapat may unity.
Yun yung unity.
Yeah.
With you, Kat, na parang even though in our smallest possible ways that we could really help to mitigate this climate change effects, you know, these micro actions eventually will have its macro effect if we're gonna combine it together. As a media practitioner, such as discourses like this, I think talagang gusto ko yung sinabi ni Miss Annie na tell stories and write stories, and as much as possible we write stories that the public masses will be able to understand, di ba? Kasi walang kwenta yung laman ng sinusulat natin kung hindi din maiintindihan ng tao, hindi maiintindihan ng masa, because what's important is we're gonna be able to share this knowledge to them.
Yeah.
And dapat lahat tayo umaangat, wala dapat maiwan. Everything should be incorporated or part of this change, this systemic change. And that's for podcast number 2, Kat. And I do think exciting yung podcast 3 natin.
So,
kasi may kasama tayo doon, di ba?
Yeah, and actually, makikita nyo kaming mag-roleplay. So, Let's see
watch
it.
out. Again, I'm your Ecobestie Palerskie.
And I'm your Ecobestie Kat.
And again, bye,
Bye,
haters.